Bring in Mark Thiessen now, former speechwriter for President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. Mark, I know you have a lot to say on this, but to go back to John's original point about the debate itself, to defund the police, it means different things to different people. We're starting to hear about it. We just heard from Joe Biden and where he stands on the issue. But as John ended, we're in an election year. What does it mean? What implications does it have?
Well, first of all, if this is an issue, if this becomes an election between Donald Trump standing for law and order and Democrats as the party of defunding the police, Donald Trump wins. Period. This is a third rail for the Democratic Party, and Joe Biden is trying to manage the issue. But the problem is that his base is he's going against the will of his base, which is for defunding the police. We all saw what happened when the Minneapolis mayor, who's a Democrat, tried to go to one of the George Floyd protests and make common cause with them. And they said, "Are you for defunding the police?" And he said no, and he was booed off the street. This is what the Democratic base wants. They want to defund the police. And Joe Biden's going to have a real hard time managing that.
The Wall Street Journal editorial board takes the debate on in a piece this morning titled "Defund Police, Watch Crime Return." Mark, Joe Biden, it writes, said Monday he opposes defunding the police, and good for him. But law enforcement is mainly a state and local obligation. And in many cities now, the defunders have power. Poor communities will be the victims if they succeed. The Journal editorial board is writing about the risk to a return to the high crime era of the 1960s and 70s that damaged so many American cities, Mark.
No, absolutely. It's a big problem. And the people who will be hurt most, by the way, are African Americans, people who live in high crime areas, who will now, the president of the city council says it's an act of privilege to call 911. Well, sorry, no, it's not. That's not an act of privilege. That's a basic responsibility of government. But the big problem that we have, I think, Nancy Pelosi said it at the top of the show, that policing is a local issue. So if there's things that can be done in Washington, like banning chokeholds, making a registry, but that's not really going to solve the problem. The obstacle to police reform is unions. This is the problem for the Democrats. It's just like the teachers' unions stop local governments from firing bad teachers and and that's why so many kids are stuck in failing public schools. It's the police unions that stop them through collective bargaining from firing bad cops. We know who the bad cops are. Most local police chiefs know, but they can't fire them because of collective bargaining rules. So really the issue is, if you really want to take on this problem, you got to get rid of collective bargaining at the local level. That's a local decision. I'd like to see Joe Biden come out against collective bargaining. That's never going to happen.
All right, well, we'll see what more we hear from him. Meanwhile, Mitch McConnell on the Senate floor made a lot of news yesterday by blasting the defund police movement as outlandish. Here he is.
I'm all for social work and mental health, but call me old-fashioned. I think you may actually want a police officer to stop a criminal and arrest him before we try to work through his feelings.
You go back to that phone call with that interview with the Minneapolis city councilwoman who's obviously calling for this and supporting the defunding of police and the abolishment of police, saying, well, what happens if you're getting robbed and you have to call the police in the middle of the night? I mean, that question is obviously out there. What does a social worker do in that instance? Final thoughts, Mark. Where does this debate go next?
Yeah, she said in that interview that it's an act of privilege to call 911. I mean, if the Democrats become the party of defunding the police, they desperately need to win suburban women to win the White House and to keep control of Congress. Do you think suburban women are for defunding the police? Do you think that, and this is, if you look at all the devastation from the looting, that's been done largely in minority communities. You could see there's a lot of Black Americans who are in favor of law and order. If the Democrats become captured by their far left wing and become the party of defunding the police, they could lose a lot of African American votes as well. So this is a very perilous issue for the Democrats.
There's a lot of ideas out there, a lot of strong feelings on both sides. We will likely see this debate continue for quite some time. Mark Thiessen, great to have you this morning. Thank you.